This happened about 3 years ago. I was 35 years old, tired of working long hours as an assistant manager at a retail store. I needed to disconnect, clear my head, and the woods seemed like a peaceful escape. So, I decided to take a solo camping trip to a remote site in northern Michigan. I wasn't a complete novice, but I had never stopped thinking about that weekend. I set up my tent in a small clearing. The sky grew darker and I lit a fire. It crackled and popped, filling the air with warmth and the smell of smoke. The woods were quiet except for the occasional rustle of branches. I was ready to settle in for a good night. But then I heard laughter. It was faint, drifting through the trees. Felt out of place. I thought maybe a group of campers were close by. I shrugged it off and went back to my book. An uneasiness settled in my chest. Around midnight, the laughter faded into whispers. I felt goosebumps rise on my arms. I told myself it was just the wind, or my imagination. But then I heard rustling in the bushes nearby. My heart began to race. I tried to convince myself it was just wildlife, but I felt a knot in my stomach. I forced myself to sleep, even though I couldn't shake the feeling I was not alone. The next day I went hiking. The whispers continued. They weren't just at night anymore. As I walked deeper into the woods, I noticed shadows flitting between the trees. My breath quickened. I wanted to believe it was just animals, but something felt wrong. I heard laughter again mixed with whispers. I stopped to listen. Felt like they were calling to me. I couldn't make out any words. When I returned to my campsite, I checked my food supplies. Something strange was happening. My snacks were disappearing gaps where I was sure crackers and candy had been. I was alone, but someone was taking my food. I spent the evening by the fire, glancing into the woods. I felt watched, like eyes were boring into my back. That final night was the worst. The fire crackled, and everything felt too quiet. No wind, no animals, just a heavy silence. I felt cold and alone. Then, I caught a glimpse of something between the trunks. A figure, barely visible. I called out, "Hello?" The figure shifted. My heart raced as I took a step closer, but it vanished. I turned around, my heart pounding. Then I heard a whisper, "Why are you here?" I turned around fast. There was nothing, just darkness and the flickering firelight. I left the next morning, but I still can't shake the feeling of being watched. The woods haunt me now. I think I saw something, or maybe it was just my mind playing tricks. Can't be sure. The weeks after that trip were restless. I couldn't shake the feeling of those eyes on me. I avoided the woods, but the memories kept creeping in. Something was off. I felt it deep in my bones. I tried to convince myself it was nothing more than fatigue and fear. But one evening, I found myself scrolling through my phone, searching for nearby trails. I wanted to face my fear, to prove that it was just a ghost story my mind had woven. So I planned another trip, this time with a friend, someone to help ground me. Sarah was excited about the outdoors. She was oblivious to my hesitation. "It'll all be fun," she said, packing her things. I wondered if I'd still enjoy it. Maybe support would help me feel less haunted. We arrived on a Friday evening, the sun setting behind the trees. The air smelled fresh, almost cleansing. I tried to breathe it in deeply, to shake off the memories of whispers and shadows. We set up the tent. Sarah chatted about the trails she researched while I half listened, feeling an unease nagging at me. As darkness approached, we gathered wood and built a fire. It crackled to life, illuminating the clearing and casting flickering shadows on the trees. I forced myself to relax, to stay engaged with her stories. But as night fell, the laughter returned. It was low at first, just on the edge of hearing. I glanced at Sarah. She looked up, surprised. "Did you hear that?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah. Sounds like kids," she said, shrugging it off. I didn't feel like shrugging. The laughter echoed again, drawing closer, but it didn't sound right. It had an unsettling quality, more chilling than cheerful. The firelight danced, and I swore I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, a figure darting between the trees. "Let us go explore a bit. See what's going on," Sarah said, her curiosity getting the best of her. Part of me wanted to grab her arm and tell her no. But the other part knew I needed to confront this. I reluctantly nodded in agreement. We wandered away from the fire, stepping carefully over roots and under branches. I felt exposed, like we were trespassing into a realm we shouldn't be in. The laughter morphed into whispering, just like before. My heart raced as I turned to Sarah. "Did you hear that?" She nodded, her face paling. "It's weird." We moved deeper into the woods, the whispers wrapping around us like a heavy fog. Then, everything went still. The laughter faded, and a suffocating silence enveloped us. I stepped back, feeling like a weight had landed on my chest. Maybe we should go back. But before we could decide, a branch snapped, loud enough to freeze us in place. I felt cold panic sweep over me. "Let us go," I urged, but Sarah was still looking ahead, her eyes wide. Then everything went dark. The firelight seemed to flicker out. My flashlight beam danced wildly as I stumbled back to find Sarah. "Where are you?" I called. No answer. Just that silence, that heavy silence that felt alive. My heart pounded. I started to call again, but as I turned, I saw something, a fleeting shadow darting between the trees. That feeling returned, that sensation of being watched. "Sarah." My voice cracked. I felt frantic, desperate to find her, but it seemed as if the forest had swallowed her whole. That S when I saw it, a figure standing just outside the light. It turned to face me, and panic surged through my veins as I stumbled backward. I knew I needed to leave, but my legs wouldn't obey. I stumbled back, my retreat quickening as the figure stepped closer. It was too dark to see clearly, but I felt its presence like a cold breath against my skin. I turned, heart racing, searching desperately for any sign of Sarah, but the woods wrapped around me, impenetrable. "Sarah." I yelled again, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. Still nothing. Just the rustle of leaves and the faintest murmur of unseen watchers, as if the trees themselves leaned in to listen. The figure shifted, moving just within the edge of my flashlight beam. My eyes strained to find clarity, but it was like trying to catch smoke in my hands. Authority slipped from my grasp. I turned and ran, the darkened path beneath me swirling into a nightmare. I had to get back to the fire, back to safety. Branches clawed at my arms as I barreled through the underbrush. Anxiety twisted around me, choking out any rational thought. Where was Sarah? I didn't stop to think. Adrenaline propelled me forward until I stumbled back into the small clearing. The fire remained, sputtering against the night, but it felt dimmer, as if it too was frightened. I skidded to a halt, breathing heavy, only then realizing how hollow the space felt without Sarah. "Sarah." I called again, this time with a quiver of desperation in my voice. My trembling hands flicked off the flashlight and refocused on the flickering flames. Nothing moved in the darkness. I began to circle the fire pit, feeling the heat against my face. The whispers echoed again, weaving through the trees, more purposeful this time. They felt like fingers stretching out, curling around my throat, making it harder to breathe. I fought the urge to scream, instead focusing on the shadows that danced just beyond the light. "Sarah." I shouted again, louder this time. I thought I heard a soft reply, a voice too faint to be sure. My heart leaped. Was she nearby? Trapped? I edged closer to the trees, straining to listen. "Sarah." An urgent plea hung in the air, asking her to come back to me. That S when I caught movement. Not far off, something twisted between the trunks, a flicker of pale skin and dark hair. I squinted, my heart jumping. "Sarah?" I stepped forward, willing myself to be brave, to follow the figure if it was her. But as I drew closer, clarity kicked in. This wasn't Sarah. It stood there, too still, and as I approached, a female face emerged from the shadows. Hollow eyes widened unnaturally, almost glowing under the faint moonlight creeping through the branches. For a moment, we locked gazes, and I froze, doubt ripping through me. What was she doing out here? Was she like me, lost? The air became thick around us, and I wanted to scream, to run, but my body felt anchored, and snared by her gaze. Then, she smiled. It was eerie and wide, revealing teeth too sharp for comfort. I turned on my heel, panic propelling me back to the fire, but the chanting whispers returned, louder and more insistent. Stay, they breathed, intertwining with my racing thoughts. I skidded to a halt, my breath hitching. No, 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 I whispered, backing up against the fire. As if sensing my distress, the figure moved closer, her smile widening. Get away from me, I yelled, feeling frantic as I grabbed a log from the fire pit, brandishing it like a weapon. The whispers grew into a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. I had no choice. I bolted into the trees, the laughter echoing behind me, each footfall a heartbeat of fear. The woods no longer felt like a place of calm but a labyrinth of shadows, and I was lost in it. Somewhere over the chaos, I heard her voice, a soft, gentle call. Help me. I stopped. The woods fell silent for a heartbeat, and then I felt it again, the weight of unseen eyes, watching. The silence pressed against my ears, heavy and thick. I stood frozen, torn between the lingering call and the urge to run. Help me. The voice threaded through the trees, familiar yet distant, like a whisper from a dream. Sarah? I called out, my voice shaky. I tried to sound steady, but the uncertainty gnawed at my resolve. I took a cautious step deeper into the woods, straining to hear anything that might guide me to her. Somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, lurking just out of sight. With each step, the shadows grew darker and thicker. I gripped the log tighter, heart racing, searching for something, anything that would lead me back to safety. I was stepping into the unknown, into something that felt more menacing than the woods should ever be. Again, the voice broke the stillness, softer this time. Please help me. It was Sarah's voice, and it felt like a lifeline. I sprinted forward, propelled by desperation, each breath stinging my lungs. Suddenly, I stumbled over a gnarled root. I fell hard against the ground, the log slipping from my grip. I bit my lip, tasting blood as I pushed myself up. My palms were scraped, but I forced myself to get back on my feet. The moment I did, the whispers returned, wrapping around me like a noose. Not yet, they hissed, each word sounding more like a command than a suggestion. I took a step back, anxiety clawing at my chest. It was then I noticed the trees had grown closer, their branches twisting, weaving together, blocking my path with a living wall. Sarah, I shouted, panic rising in my throat. I turned sharply, searching for an escape. That was when I saw it, a flicker of movement ahead, almost like a shadow dancing at the edge of the clearing. I felt a pull to follow it, an inexplicable urge driving me forward. Against my better judgment, I pressed on. Each step felt heavy as I broke through the thicket, stumbling into a small, open space lit by the faint glow of the moon. In the middle, there was an ancient stone well partially covered in vines. My heart skipped. I had never seen this spot before on our maps. The voice came again, more insistent, echoing from the depths. Help me. I'm down here. I peered over the edge, my stomach twisting. What if I found her down there? But the darkness was impenetrable, and I felt unease stir in my gut. I hesitated. This couldn't be right. Sarah, are you really down there? I called, the weight of my doubt heavy. Silence met my question. Just when I was about to retreat, an icy wind swirled around me, rattling the branches overhead. Help me, the voice reiterated, clearer yet colder. Then I saw something shift in the darkness below. A pale hand extended out of the well, fingers reaching up as if begging for salvation. My heart raced. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. There was something off about how the hand moved, unnatural, like it was being guided by strings. Before I could process what was happening, the whispers crescendoed into a chilling harmony. Stay. Help her. My thoughts collided, confusion swirling with dread. Without a choice left, I backed away, stumbling over the roots. I cast one last glance into the inky blackness of the well, dread twisting in my stomach. The hand was still reaching for me. Then everything went dark. The world around me vanished, plunging me into a suffocating silence that brushed against my skin like ice. I was alone in the dark, and somewhere out there, Sarah was still calling. The darkness held me tight, and for a moment, I felt weightless, as if I was no longer part of the world. But then, a flicker of light pulled me back. I blinked hard, trying to make sense of the shifting shadows. Slowly, a dim glow began to form before me, illuminating the edges of the clearing. I was still near the well, though somehow the hand I had seen was gone. I stepped closer, unease stitching itself into my muscles. The air felt charged, electric. The whispers had faded, but I sensed something was still off. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught another flicker of movement, something darting between the trees. My heart thudded as I turned to look. The figure stood watching me, perhaps 10 feet away. It was cloaked in darkness, a mere outline against the trees. "Sarah?" I said, voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond, just stood there unnaturally still. I took a breath, trying to calm the rising fear. I should have run, but curiosity held me in place. "Is that you?" I tried again, clearer this time. A rustling sound broke the silence. The figure shifted, moving closer, and as it did, it faded beyond the light's reach. I blinked, my instincts screaming at me to retreat, but I felt frozen, trapped in the eerie pull of the forest. "Come," it beckoned, voice low and smooth like honey. "Just come closer." The familiarity washed over me, tinged with a sense of wrongness. My instincts shouted for me to turn and sprint back to safety, but the voice was just too inviting. A sudden rush of wind blew through the clearing, tossing leaves into the air. I could hear faint whispers surrounding me again, almost like laughter, but not quite. Felt mocking, sinister. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to move. I had to get out of there. Taking a step back, I stumbled over the roots again and lost my balance. Falling hard to the ground, I turned to crawl away, eyes locked on the patch of darkness. But the figure was gone. Just like that, panic surged through my veins, and I scrambled to my feet. The well loomed large behind me, the moonlight now revealing more of it. As I rushed past, my foot caught on something, a rusted piece of metal half buried in the dirt. I gasped, kneeling to examine it. It was a small locket, once silver but now tarnished and grimy. For a moment, I was mesmerized, pushing through the layer of dirt to open it. Inside, there was a picture, 2 smiling faces I didn't recognize. The cold crept back into the air, and I felt the need to toss it aside. But before I could, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. That's when I noticed the darkened well again. I stood frozen, trying to catch my breath, when suddenly, I heard it. A splash echoed from within, deep and hollow. The voice of Sarah broke through the remnants of the whispers. "Why did you leave?" called, sounding distressed. I turned and looked back toward the well, but it felt more like a trap. Sweat trickled down my back, and the world around me felt charged with danger. "I'm coming," I shouted, though I couldn't figure out how. This was wrong. Everything was wrong. Then, the shadows stirred again, and the laughter returned, now echoing in my mind. "Come back," it sang. My heart raced, and I took off running, back toward the trees, desperate to find an escape. Whatever was happening in those woods was far from over. I had to find Sarah. The ground rushed beneath my feet as I sprinted through the trees, branches clawing at my clothes. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I pushed forward, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah. What was happening? Why did everything feel off? With each step, the whispers followed, repeating the same eerie phrase over and over. "Come back." It felt like a taunt meant to pull me back into the depths of whatever had taken hold of this forest. But I couldn't dwell on that. I had to focus on finding Sarah, no matter the cost. I ducked beneath a low-hanging branch and found a narrow path I hadn't noticed before, barely discernible in the moonlight. It wound deeper into the woods, away from the clearing. For a moment, I hesitated. My instincts shouted to stay away from the unknown. But Sarah's voice echoed again, faint yet desperate. Not thinking twice, I darted down the path. The dense trees around me seemed to fold in closer, shadows thickening like a dark veil. I struggled to ignore the sharp prickling at the back of my neck, prompting me to look over my shoulder. Nothing. Just darkness laced with whispers. Suddenly, I stumbled across a clearing that was different from the last. It was unnaturally still. The usual sounds of the forest fell silent. I stopped, scanning the area, hoping to find some sign of Sarah. When I noticed it, a small structure barely visible behind the trees, partially overgrown with vines and moss. Curiosity nudged me forward. I approached the dilapidated building. It looked like an old hunting cabin, long forgotten. Still, I felt an odd pull. Without thinking, I pushed the door open, and it creaked loudly, the sound echoing in the eerie silence. Inside, the air smelled stale and musty. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the wood, illuminating patches of the dusty floor. On a table in the center of the room lay scattered papers and photographs, much like the locket I had found. I stepped closer, heart pounding as I picked one up. The image was of a woman, her face hauntingly familiar. I squinted as details started coming back to me. She looked like Sarah, but older. My breath caught in my throat. Who was she? Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, heart racing. Panic surged as I spun around, but there was no one there. I was completely alone. Then, I heard it again, a soft cry, almost like a whisper, drifting from somewhere in the walls. Help me! The voice was unmistakable. It was Sarah. I rushed back to the door, but it wouldn't budge no matter how hard I pushed. The whispers grew louder, creating a cacophony that crashed against my ears. Join us, they chanted. Dark figures shifted outside the window. I pressed my face against the glass. And there they were, faces I didn't recognize, staring straight at me with empty eyes. My heart sank. This couldn't be real. In a desperate attempt, I turned back to the room, searching for anything that could help me escape. When I noticed something gleaming in the corner. A small axe rested there, its blade glinting in the dim light. It was my only chance. I grabbed it, feeling the weight of fearlessness swell within me. I had to find Sarah. As I raised the axe and brought it down on the door with all my strength, a voice pierced through the chaos, clear and loud. Don't! Cut through everything, freezing me in place. I dropped the axe as dread flooded my chest. I turned slowly and faced the darkness behind me, realizing I was no longer alone. And when I saw her. Her figure emerged from the shadows, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Sarah, but her eyes, there was something off about them. They looked distant, as if she was staring through me rather than at me. Her clothes were torn, and there was dirt smeared across her face. Sarah, I gasped, relief flooding through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by confusion and fear. Are you okay? She took a step forward, but her movement was strange, almost mechanical. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered, her voice tinged with sorrow. This place, it changes you. What do you mean? My heart raced as she spoke. Before she could answer, the walls seemed to pulse around us, the shadows flickering. I clenched my fists, trying to focus. We need to get out of here, Sarah. We need to leave. She shook her head, her expression shifting to one of anguish. You don't understand. They want you. They'll do anything to keep you here. I can't let that happen. Panic surged through me again. Let us just break the door down, I shouted, glancing back toward the wooden barrier. We can find a way. Suddenly, everything went still. I turned back to her, but she was no longer close. She stood at the cabin's far wall, a faint light emanating from her. You don't have to rescue me, Jake, she said, her voice hauntingly calm. I'm not the one in danger. I felt my chest tighten as cold realization washed over me. What do you mean? I asked, a tremor in my voice. They're coming, she said, eyes wide, pleading with me. You need to trust me. Follow the light and don't look back. Instinct kicked in and I bolted for her. No, wait. I want to leave you. But as I reached her, the shadows converged, swallowing her in an instant. I turned toward the door, my instincts screaming at me to escape. The figures outside had drawn closer, their intentions clear. They glared at me with their hollow eyes, chanting softly, "Stay with us." I turned back to the void where Sarah had just stood. "No, Sarah." The weight of dread settled in my stomach. Then, without thinking, I sped toward the window. I had to escape, even if it meant risking everything. I braced myself and hurled myself through it, shards of glass raining down as I landed hard on the forest floor outside. Winded but fueled by desperation, I scrambled to my feet and didn't look back. Branches whipped against my face as I ran, breathless. The whispers faded behind me, but fear drove me forward. I rounded trees without thinking, the dark woods shifting around me. I could hear them, the voices of the figures. Join us. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of dread pulled me to a halt. I spun around, my lungs burning. The forest had transformed into a maze, paths twisting in impossible ways. A desperate thought clawed at my mind. What if there was no way out? And then I saw it, a ghostly flicker of light shimmering in the distance. It moved like a flame against the darkness, or like a beacon. My heart raced as I squinted. "Sarah?" I called out, hesitating, but something deep within me warned against it. As I stood there caught between the voices fading behind me and the flickering light ahead, a chilling realization settled. I wasn't just running from whatever was chasing me. I was running toward something equally sinister. Instinctively, I turned and resumed my flight, afraid of what awaited me in the light and terrified of what would happen if I stayed. Each step I took seemed to echo through the trees, the silence pressing down around me. I didn't dare look back. I focused on just placing one foot in front of the other, hoping to burst through the tree-line and find the safety of the open sky. But the woods felt alive, as if they were shifting, rearranging themselves to trap me inside. I sprinted, heart pounding, when suddenly I stumbled over a root hidden beneath the carpet of fallen leaves. I fell, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through my palms as I pushed myself back up. I took a shaky breath and kept moving, the forest floor still echoing with the whispers that lurked behind me. I needed to clear my head. Where was I? What had happened to Sarah? I needed answers, but fear tangled with my thoughts, making it hard to think straight. Then I heard a rustling sound, faint but distinct. My breath caught in my throat as I paused, straining to listen. It came from the bushes to my left, a low, guttural murmur that sent a chill down my spine. "Join us." It was a voice, but not a human one. It was a chorus, like the fluttering of wind through the trees, but darker, twisted. The thought of confronting whatever made that sound filled me with dread. I forced myself to keep moving, zigzagging through the trees. The thicker the brush became, the more the shadows pressed in on me. Every snap of a twig felt like a shout in the stillness, amplifying my fear. My breaths were coming fast and shallow now. Then I noticed something unusual. There were markings on the trees, scratches that formed symbols, almost like runes carved into the bark. I reached out to touch one, and an electric jolt shot through me. I pulled back, startled. I couldn't explain it, but in that moment, I sensed an ancient presence surrounding me, watching. "Jake!" The voice broke through my thoughts. It was Sarah's voice, but it was warped, echoing from every direction. "Jake! Help! Sarah!" I shouted, desperation rising once more. "Where are you?" The voice faded into the shadows, and I felt an urge to run toward it, to chase it. But I hesitated. Was it really her? A trick of the forest? I drew in a sharp breath, my decision made. I had to keep her safe. But just as I took a step forward, everything seemed to shift. The ground beneath me felt like it was sliding away. I staggered and fell back against a tree, trying to regain my balance. When I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from deeper in the woods. My heart raced again, pounding painfully against my ribs. I couldn't just stand here. I needed to get further away from the source of the voice and whatever was coming. Glancing back in the direction of the sound, I turned my focus instead to finding another route. When I saw it. A narrow path between the trees, barely visible beneath the leaves. I squinted at the dim light spilling from its mouth, a gentle glow that almost seemed inviting. A part of me wanted to run down that path, but another part held me back. What if it led me right into their arms? but standing still only invited danger. I took a deep breath and plunged down the path, every instinct screaming at me to move faster. The footsteps echoed behind me, louder now. Someone or something was out there. As I reached the end of the path, I felt a sudden rush of cold air. It was a clearing. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Just as I stepped into the open space, the whispers surged again, louder and more demanding. Shadows poured in behind me, threatening to pull me back. In the clearing's center stood an old stone well, stones worn smooth and dark with age. It seemed to pulse with the same energy I had felt against the trees. My heart pounded as I took a hesitant step closer, unaware of what awaited me. Then, I heard a voice clearer than before echoing directly from the well. "Help her or lose yourself." I froze. That was a choice I would have to make, but I didn't know how. The swirling darkness behind me tugged at my resolve. I could feel the pull of the well, a siren song that hummed in my ears. Something was waiting inside. Before I could think further, the shadows at my back surged forward with a ghastly rush. I turned, knowing I had to act fast. But this time I wouldn't let them take me without a fight. I spun around to face the darkness, adrenaline flooding my veins. The whispers rose to a shrill crescendo, echoing through my skull like 100 voices blurred together. I clenched my fists and stumbled backward, ready to fight, but my mind raced, searching for a way out. The well loomed before me, ancient and ominous. It felt like a portal to something beyond my understanding. As I backed against the cold stone, the whispers clawed at my sanity. "Help her," they twisted in my ears, making it impossible to think straight. I felt a wave of anger sharpen my focus. I could not let them take me. Not now. Not without answers. I turned and peered into the well, its depth unfathomable and dark. I had to make a choice. Should I reach into the unknown depths or face whatever stalked behind me? The darkness surged, a mass of shadows threatening to engulf me. "Jake, help!" The voice was clearer now, pulling me toward the well. I gritted my teeth, torn between fear and the need to save Sarah. The shadows snapped closer, sizzling against the air like electric currents. I lunged toward the well, heart hammering, and grasped the edge, peering in. "Sarah," I called again, desperate. "Where are you?" At that moment, a flicker of light flickered from within like a candle's flame struggling against the dark. I leaned in closer, risking it, as the shadows rushed forward, swirling like a tempest around me. My fingers grazed the edge of the well, its surface cool and slick. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the depths, pale and trembling. I recoiled, confusion racing through me. Was it Sarah? Couldn't tell. "Jake," the voice again, but this time it was mixed with a sense of urgency that twisted my gut. "Grab my hand," I pleaded, reaching down. The hand stretched out, grasping at the air, but just as quickly it disappeared, pulled back into the inky void. My heart sank. Couldn't lose her? From behind, I could sense the shadows coalescing into something more solid, an indistinct shape that seemed to ripple against the darkness. I turned, panic inching up my spine. "Stay away from me," I shouted, but my voice wavered, fear gnawing at my resolve. The shape pushed through the shadows, a figure that seemed humanoid yet not. I couldn't make out any features, just the empty space where its face should be. It reached out, and that S when I noticed the symbols carving into the trees igniting with a faint glow. They pulsed in rhythm with the figure's movement, whispering secrets of the forest. I edged back, heart racing as realization struck me. The markings were a warning, a plea, or perhaps a key to understanding what was happening. "I want to join you," I shouted defiantly, shaking off the urge to succumb to their call. But that only spurred the figure forward. The rush of shadows swirled faster, and suddenly, the bright light from the well flickered out, plunging everything into darkness. The last thing I felt was a chill, wrapping around me like chains, before my scream was swallowed by the empty void. Then everything went silent. I blinked, but the darkness remained. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and shallow, as I struggled to orient myself. Had I been pulled in? Or had I just lost consciousness? Just as panic started to swell again, a glimmer of light flickered back into existence. I rubbed my eyes, confused. That's when I realized I was no longer at the well. I stood in the middle of another clearing, flanked by ancient trees that seemed to watch me silently. The air felt different, charged with an unmistakable energy. I could sense that I was still not alone. But where was Sarah? A low growl reverberated in the distance. My heart dropped. I turned to face whatever was lurking just beyond the edge of the lights. The air was thick with tension, and fear coiled tightly in my chest. "Sarah." I called out, but the silence that followed was deafening. The growl echoed again, closer now. Panic clawed at my throat. I had to find her, yet every instinct screamed to run. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement, a shadow darting between the trees. Was it her? I took a step forward, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot barely breaking the stillness. The shadows danced around me, and I felt their pull once more, an urge to turn back to the well. But I couldn't. I had already lost so much. I wouldn't lose Sarah too. I pressed on, heart racing as I navigated deeper into the clearing. The growling intensified, each rumble vibrating through the ground. Then it happened. A figure emerged from the darkness, massive and hulking. Its eyes glowed with an unyielding light, piercing through the night. My breath caught in my throat. In an instinctual reaction, I stumbled backward, fear overwhelming any sense of reason. But then the figure spoke, not growling this time, but in a deep, resonant voice that seemed to reverberate in the air around me. "You must choose. Her life hangs in the balance." "Choose?" I stammered, disbelief mingling with a glimmer of hope. "What do you mean?" "Your essence for hers," it replied, its gaze unwavering. "Join us or let her be lost to the void." Panic gripped me again. I had heard the whispers before, felt their allure, but this was different. "No, I want to leave her." I took a hesitant step forward, heart pounding. "Where is she? Is she safe?" The figure shifted, shadows flowing around it like a cloak. "Safe? She is eternally entwined in this realm. To save her, you must accept the shadow." A lump formed in my throat. "No, I don't want any of this," I shouted, frantically searching for Sarah. "She deserves to be free." But the words hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. In that instant, I remembered the locket, the way the faces felt familiar, how they seemed connected to this very darkness. "What is it you want?" I pressed, eyes darting around as if expecting an answer to emerge from the depths of the forest. "Balance." The dark figure's eyes blazed brighter. "We exist in duality, freedom and captivity, light and shadow. Her soul anchors this place. You have the choice to be a part of it." I closed my eyes, breath coming fast. My mind flashed with memories of Sarah, of laughter and light. I couldn't allow her to perish in this nightmare. If I have to save her, then I'll do it. I'd give anything, I shouted, spirit ignited with determination. The figure regarded me, presence looming as still as stone. "Then it shall be so. You either join the shadows or risk losing her forever." A moment of silence hung between us, filled with trepidation. And then it tilted its head, a signal of decision, and the very ground beneath me shifted, sending me reeling. "Jake!" I heard her voice, distant yet clear, echoing through the chaos. "I'm here. Help me." The shadows swirled around me, feeling like a blanket being pulled tight. I recognized that pleading tone, the urgency behind it. "I want to leave you behind," I yelled into the void, adrenaline surging through my veins. Embracing the cold that wrapped around my form intimately, I forced my way forward, feeling an invisible tether pull me toward her voice. "Stay with me, Sarah," I barked, my resolve hardened. She answered back, her voice guiding me through the darkness. "We have to find each other." In that moment it was like stepping through a threshold. The shadows around me retreated, revealing the landscape I had known seconds before, yet transformed, each whisper crystallizing into clarity. The clearing pulsed with a heartbeat, the air thrumming with energy. I spotted her then, Barely visible within the shadows, a figure struggling against unseen restraints. I rushed toward her, propelled by hope and urgency. "Sarah," I called, pushing through the veil of darkness that threatened to consume me. She turned, eyes wide and filled with a depth of emotion that caught my breath. "Jake!" The look on her face ignited my heart. Reminder of all I'd fought for. But then the figure that had confronted me rushed between us, an embodiment of darkness. A sentinel of the shadows. "You cannot take her from this place." "No," I shouted, desperation clawing at me. I stepped closer, every instinct telling me I must protect her. "She is not yours." With one sweep of its arm, the figure sent a wave of energy crashing down. "Join us or be lost." The emotions surged through me, raw and unfiltered. "Never," I declared, channeling every ounce of roaring defiance. The shadows recoiled, and I felt my own essence shift, each step forward an act of rebellion. With a final leap, I grasped Sarah's hand, pulling her against me. "We will escape together." And in that moment, light erupted from the clearing, blinding and forceful, as if the world itself had split in two. The shadows clawed at the light, desperation filling the air like smoke. But together we held on, refusing to succumb. Then everything shattered, a roaring tumult as the darkness lost its hold. We were enveloped in light, warmth flooding over us as we were cast free from the tendrils of the night. And just like that, we fell. I blinked. The ground was solid beneath me, sharp branches and cool foliage brushing my cheek as I gasped for breath, light spilling across my face. I raised my head, disoriented but whole. "Sarah?" My voice trembled, and she appeared beside me, terrified yet alive, confusion washing over her features. "Jake!" Her voice broke through my haze. "We made it." Relief flooded me, but questions lingered as I scanned the surrounding woods, half expecting to see the figure, hear the whispers. But the forest stood silent and still, the shadows retreating, almost as if they had never existed. I turned back to her, a wave of uncertainty flooding my thoughts. "What just happened?" She shook her head, eyes wide. "I'm not sure, but I never want to find out again." As we rose, brushing off the debris, I hesitated, swallowing hard against the weight of the unknown. The shadows were gone, but the forest held secrets still. Would it always be this way? Would the trails hold a memory of the shadows that had nearly claimed us? My mind raced with questions, but as we started our way through the trees, I glanced back one last time toward the darkness. And for the first time, I felt the weight of freedom, fragile and fleeting, yet undeniably real. I couldn't help but wonder if it was really over, or if we had merely bought ourselves time in a place steeped in mysteries that would linger, dark eyes still watching from the veil of the woods. But for now, the chaos was behind us, and I intended to keep it that way.